You're listening to Support Creative Souls podcast, highlighting and supporting inspiring creatives, plus a few shoe stories to help kick up your innovative journey. Hosted by me, Stefani V.
What's up, everybody? We are back at Support Creative Souls here in Houston at our home We Co-work space in downtown. We are so excited. We're back. It's a new year. We got new episodes, and I've got a special, beautiful, lovely new guest. This is Casey Handy Smith. And Casey, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, well, thanks so much for having me today.
This looks good on you.
Thank you, thank you. Excited to be here. Love this new space. So I love checking out new places in Houston. But like you said, my name is Casey Handy Smith. I have a boutique entertainment and digital media law firm where I work with.
Talking law today, guys. This is serious. This is serious.
Trying not to put all to sleep today.
Don't get scared. Everybody, once they hear the law and stuff, like, get scared. Don't do it.
So I work with creatives, influencers, thought leaders, and helping them to negotiate pivotal contracts. And also helping them kind of get their back end in order as well as they're pursuing bigger opportunities. So making sure that they're situated with their businesses and their brands on the back end. So as they're propelling in their industry and they're presented with new opportunities, we're able to pursue things.
This is the most important thing for your brand, especially now that people are working with a lot more brands and these contracts and how much you should be charging them to use for your services. Like a lot of people don't think like that you need anything like that, but I think it's so important that you tell them today that it's like such a necessity, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's definitely a necessity. And what I find too is a lot of times it's always can be a little stressful when someone's being presented with like a new opportunity that might be kind of their first really big thing, or it's just a bit out of their comfort zone.
Give us an example of what is a really big thing, because for me, coming from music, it was a record deal. Mm-hmm. But like for influencers nowadays, what is a big thing for them to where they would need a contract? Because I think people don't know like
what exactly it is. Yeah, so it can be a variety of things. It could be maybe it's your first like brand sponsorship agreement that you're getting, and you're getting like a substantial sum of money on the table in the deal, or maybe you're more of like an influencer thought leader type and you are getting a book publishing deal. So it really just kind of depends on your industry, the space you're in, but to be honest, you really always need contracts. That might just be the lawyer in me speaking, because I get a little terrified sometimes when people like come to me after. Because people a lot of times don't think exactly. Because a lot of times people don't think about attorneys until things have already hit the fan.
They could have come to you prior and been like, you could have gotten more, or they should have done this. Because technically, you're always going to be getting taken advantage of as an influencer or something. Because if you don't have that paperwork or something that says a stipulation, if you don't really know what you're reading, you just want the money and you want to sign for something, you could be losing a lot of rights that you're not aware of.
So losing rights, and even one thing a lot of people don't think about is you could be setting yourself up for potentially putting yourself in a bad legal situation in terms of you could end up breaching a contract because you simply just didn't even know that those terms were in there. Like I see that happen with influencers.
That's a good brands.
I didn't think about that. Brands, because they'll have really specific stipulations that relate to like how you can use their logos and their intellectual property and the things that they own.
And also like what other brands you can't, like if you got a liquor company that's sponsoring, you can't go to another liquor company and post another drink in your hand that you do.
Exactly.
But people don't know that. So that's cool.
You gotta read those.
So what was your first job or venture?
My very first job or venture, like in life, or we're talking specifically like legal?
I would say legal, since we're talking mostly legal.
Yeah, so my very first legal space, I actually worked for a federal judge back home in Cincinnati, where I'm from, Cincinnati, Ohio. And I did that for a summer. I was part of a program in undergrad where they place minority students in various like legal environments who were interested in being attorneys one day. So every summer I was working in a
So did you know growing up that this was something that you wanted to do, or did it like come like was someone like you should be a lawyer, you should be a lawyer? Because we don't really get that a lot. In my family, we need to start saying it more.
Yeah.
Or was this something that people in your family were lawyers and you thought?
Nobody in my family is lawyers. I have a few cousins now. Like I think my generation, we're like the first generation where we have like a few lawyers and stuff now coming out. So there was no like real guidance, and there was no one like grooming me for like the legal industry. And it really wasn't something that I like grew up like, oh, I really want to be a lawyer. I think maybe in high school I met some attorneys, and I just started to kind of get interested like in the legal space in general. And but I've always been more on the creative side because I'm a musician myself.
Right, that's why I said you originally want to be a songwriter.
Yeah.
Right. So tell me about that. Okay. I mean, can you write me a song? No. When people like, I'm singing, can you write me a song? Like, no.
So growing up, so my family is very, we're all very musical in some sense. So if nothing else, growing up, it was like, you're gonna play an instrument. Right. That's what we were doing.
Yeah, I wish my mom said that to me instead of gymnastics. Like, go play the piano. Like.
Yeah, well, I did gymnastics too. But yeah. So growing up, I was classically trained piano, and I did like all that stuff, like competitions and all that stuff. And I really loved it growing up, and I was kind of a bit of a band nerd, honestly, because I would get into like playing all types of different instruments and all that stuff. And just somewhere.
Ain't nothing wrong with the band nerds. They end up being the most successful. Okay, just saying that.
Yeah, so like music was always a passion. And I loved like, the creative side of it. Yeah. But being around so many creative people and kind of seeing how a lot of creatives don't have as much of the business acumen and how to kind of navigate like, well, it's really awesome and amazing that you're super talented and that you create all these amazing things, but how can you leverage your creativity? Like how can we now protect what you've created? How can we now actually make a profit from this? You see so many creative people who are out here just struggling, trying to make it.
It really is. And now that everyone's become their own brand and there's so many ways to become an outlet to get for profit and to be able to market yourself, there's so many more opportunities, and I just feel like we lack in not finding those opportunities, because we're not, being taught like, well, this is what you need to do legally, or how to set things up, so that it's legit, other than I got some songs online and, sometimes somebody downloads one. But even with our salsa business, I've had to learn a lot just from a new company and legally what we've had to set up our LLC, and we had to, so it's not just like I got a truck set up and I'm selling salsa outside my truck. It's like you've got to learn the business side of things, and as a creative, that's not fun for me at all.
And it was kind of interesting because growing up, it's like even though I had this creative side, I also had this very like analytical, paid more attention to kind of the business things going on, and so for me it kind of became a way to like bridge the two things that I enjoyed, like the business side of things with the kind of creative and entertainment side of things, because a lot of it too is just noticing how there's such a lack of like diverse representation of creatives, so because a lot of creatives, they may come from Black and brown communities, but unfortunately there aren't a lot of people who look like them who are helping them move forward with the business side of things to actually propel their businesses.
That's so true, and I know even for me, like when I first started out in music and I got my first contract, I found some guy in New York that read through my contract, and a lot of people will say this, like your first record deal is probably the worst record deal that you'll ever sign. And it literally was a piece of junk, and it's why I decided to part ways. But if I would have had somebody like you that sat down with me and said, do not sign this, do not sign this, you're worth more. Because I think also too, like, we get so excited by the fact that someone wants to sign us and wants to give something that, like, we don't want to miss out on that opportunity. But I think what we're missing is that we also can get more by just listening to somebody and know that if that person really wants you and if they really want you to sign something, they're not going to be upset because you won't sign the first contract. And I miss those are some of the key things that I learned in signing a record deal that went sour.
Yeah, and you have time too. That's what I also tell people. Like, it's funny because people will come to me and they're like, "Oh, I have this thing on the table. Like, I gotta get this review. Like, I gotta get this going because I gotta get."
You don't want to miss opportunity. You don't want to miss opportunity.
And it's like any legitimate business person on the other side is going to 100% understand if you say, "Hey, I need to get an attorney to review this first before like we move forward." Like, it's not like you have time to like breathe and actually do what you need to do to get yourself in order. But there is definitely always that kind of false sense of urgency that,
and if there is that urgency, it's a bad deal. Capital B-A-D.
Exactly.
Don't sign.
Exactly.
You heard it here from the entertainment lawyers. Okay, so you volunteer at TALA. Why is that important for you to volunteer? I know we're going to use you as a volunteer here for our Follow My Feet mentorship program. But why is it important? I'll tell you why it's important for me, because it gives me, some purpose in being a creative. But you, as like being a creative and in entertainment law, like, what's your feeling of it?
Yeah, so TALA is Texas Accountants and Lawyers for the Arts. I started kind of working with them really early in my practice. I found out about them, and I like working with them and taking cases when I kind of can, because I genuinely just like helping people, honestly. I mean, that's really
contracts together. Come over.
All my thousands. And I mean, it's just the reality that a lot of creative people, there's a huge discrepancy between the space of I'm in a position where I can actually afford legal services, and those who are in a position where they can afford to retain me, full time or just on a regular basis. So it's important for me to just be able to give back to that community of people who still need the exact same stuff. Like, just because you're just starting, or it might not be.
You may be helping somebody that's signing that big deal that later can come to you and be like, okay, now it's the real deal. I can actually
exactly, yeah. And so legal protection is no less important. And because it's funny, people ask me all the time. They're like, so at what point do I need an attorney? I'm like, I mean, the law is never, like, there's no, like, magic day.
I'm laughing because I've been there.
Like,
should I?
But it's a real thing, because when you're kind of first starting or you're, like, newer in the space, like, you don't necessarily have the resources yet to be able to afford an attorney, to afford an accountant, and all this, all this stuff that you may need. So a lot of it is you just kind of educating yourself, or finding some stuff on the internet.
Or there's that one that I remember looking up something on the internet, and I was like, you know what, this doesn't make any sense to me. I better get somebody to actually explain before I sign this another bad contract. So I love how you are creative and you have that like musical background, and that kind of made you get into more of entertainment law. So if someone else is trying to get into, let's say, entertainment law, like, what are some steps that they can take to kind of follow in your footsteps? To follow your feet.
I would really say, like, be clear on what it is that you want to do. If there's a certain area of entertainment that you're interested in getting into, like, really study that particular industry. So not even so much just on the legal side, but like just really become a student of that industry. Like,
so let me ask you, so if you're entertainment now, and my fiance asked me this morning, he's like, who are you interviewing? I was in entertainment. Well, what kind of entertainment? And I looked at him, it's like, entertainment, entertainment, like everything. Is it everything, or are you specific in music and, influencers,
Yeah, so entertainment industry is definitely has a lot of facets, like your fiance mentioned. So for me, when I first started my practice,
actually, he's my husband now. He's not my fiance anymore. Sorry, I just had moment. Go ahead.
Congratulations. But yeah, so when I first started my practice, I primarily worked specifically with musicians because that was my background. I studied music business, you know, in college, so I worked with a lot of musicians starting out. Now I still work with musicians, but I started to kind of transition more into the digital media space over the last few years, primarily because of the way the industry has changed too. You know, I would say probably a year or so into my practice, I was asked to speak at some local bloggers conference. I used to have this blog, so I was, you know, just mingling with these people. And, you know, they were like, oh, would you come and just speak on like intellectual property issues for like bloggers? And so from that opportunity, then I started speaking at other conferences and other places. And I just started working with people in the online blogging space who, you know, over time had developed their own audiences to the point where now, you know, brands are, like brands are approaching them. And so helping them with just kind of the evolution.
Isn't it crazy? Isn't it crazy? Like that's a whole entity that's started, and even brands don't realize it yet. That, you know, there's still a lot of brands struggling with the fact that like these people are celebrities. They are, you know, you need to pay them this much because they are selling for you. But I just find it crazy because it's like, I'm an influencer and I do all of this now, and you're like, and I need to get paid. You know, people still don't understand that they need to be getting paid. So that's cool. What has been one of your biggest challenges, like either as a lawyer or mixing the two with creative? You know, do you ever want to go back to just do music and songwrite and be that creative, or do you love the space that you're in, or can you mix the two?
I mean, I think with life, like life is multifaceted. Like none of us are all just one thing. So I don't, you know, do as much of the creative stuff now as I used to, for sure. For a while, I was still like really doing the music. I was like in law school, I was teaching like piano lessons and stuff, just to like kind of find some kind of little outlet to like stay into it or whatever. But I definitely love like what I'm doing now in the space that I'm in. And I realize that it's kind of a unique position because not a lot of creative people have the ability to kind of be able to handle the business side of things. And so I really love being able to help people in that capacity. But in terms of, to answer your question, I guess my biggest challenges to date have really just been finding more like-minded people. You know, the legal space is a very like traditional, like this is how you operate as an attorney, like this is what you do, like these are the organizations that you're part of, like you know. And so it's been a challenge in finding like other attorneys or just other professionals who are like in a similar space and who are doing things differently, outside the box. But I will say that honestly, working with clients in the online space like really opened my eyes up to a whole nother world and allowed me to start connecting with other people just in other places. Like some of my best business friends are people that I've seen in person like 3 times in the last like year and a half. You know what I mean? Yeah, exactly. We talk all the time because we're like, you know, so similar when it comes to like business stuff and all of that. And it's like
I'm the same way. Like one of my great friends, I haven't seen her in a year, but like I feel like I've seen her last week, you know, because we talk constantly about what we're gonna do, what's going on. You know, she helped me with the cooking show and stuff like that. And you're right, but I was like, I don't need to see her, but we're in the same like home, you know, like we filter off of our creative ideas and we thrive on that, and it makes a great friend. But you realize like, girl, I haven't seen you in a year.
Exactly.
Like what? So I was going to ask you, so that was one of your biggest challenges. Oh, as far as people coming in, you know, wanting to become a lawyer, you know, the steps, the internships, you know, you're looking at a lot of the youth watch the show, listen, you know, I guess the thing is like people always think because I'm a creative, like I don't really want to be a lawyer. You know, I want to do my music. I want to do music. And like, you know, so they don't see it as maybe being smart enough, or their parents telling them that, you know, you can't afford those type of schools. So like, what type of things did you do, you know, like did you have an internship, or what were your steps into getting into law school?
Yeah, so the program I mentioned earlier, back home in Cincinnati, played a huge part in me for becoming an attorney, because, you know, like I mentioned also previously, you know, I didn't have any family or like close friends who were in the legal space. So I was like that. I had no idea. It was like, okay, I'm interested.
You want to be a lawyer? you gotta be smart to be a lawyer. That's all I always got.
Yeah, I mean, and luckily, like I have a very supportive family, so they're like, oh, like awesome, like that's great, but like realistically, they didn't know like what to tell me to do, or like who to, you know, get in touch with or anything like that. I mean, my dad.
And they don't think entertainment; they think like criminal, you know.
Exactly, like criminal, family law, you know, personal injury.
And this is a whole nother realm of like, you know, what you can do.
Yeah, and so my dad was still working at the time. He worked for the federal government, and he, by virtue of that, was around a lot of attorneys all the time. And so he ended up putting me in touch with some people, and I was fortunate enough to be able to get involved with this particular program, which again was for minority students interested in going to law school, for undergraduate students. And every single summer, I worked in different legal settings. So like one summer I worked for the federal judge, one summer I worked in GE's legal department, another summer I did like big law firm stuff.
And this is to show you that there are opportunities. So for whatever it is that you want to do, there are opportunities that are everywhere for whatever field it is. And so don't ever think like, I can't ever get into that, or I don't know how I'll get into that, because you know, all her dad did was talk to one person who ended up getting her into this program, which helped pay for her road.
Yeah, I mean, because from there I was able to meet a ton of other attorneys. I was able to connect with people who were we were like in the same, I guess, class, you would call it. So we were helping each other along the way. Like, you know, for people who were like a year or two ahead, like, oh, this is what you can expect on the LSAT. Like, here's what study materials and stuff that you need to make sure. So for anyone watching who's wondering, like, just generally the steps, I mean, you have to get a bachelor's degree, any major, really. People may tell you, like, do political science or do like crim law, but none of it matters. I mean, honestly, law school is a whole different like ballpark. Like, it really doesn't matter.
Different.
It's just a whole different, so you can just follow your passion, major in what you want to major in, but you know, you gotta get your degree, take the LSAT, then law school is another 3 years, then you take the bar exam, and all that school.
Put it this way, you got to be extremely dedicated to something that you feel you're passionate about doing, and something that you love doing, and know that it does not happen overnight. It's a lot of work, but then again, nothing happens overnight, and everything is a lot of work, so it just depends how dedicated you are.
So with the podcast, it was an idea I had like a couple of years ago, and everyone I talked to, including yourself, was like, you know, go ahead and just do it. Like, there's nothing to lose, like, just do it. And so the purpose of the podcast, and really how the idea came to me, is that I wanted to highlight conversations of successful influencers and thought leaders about some of the mishaps they've had along the way on the business side of things. So from a legal aspect, or just business in general, so that people can really hear those stories and learn from those experiences to see, you know, how did you overcome that challenge? Like, what things do you wish you had done differently at the beginning? Because so many people, like, you know, a lot of podcasts highlight all the positive things that everyone is doing. And some of my favorite podcasts that I love listening to, like, you know, it's all about really motivation and like hearing all the good stuff. And so you follow these big brands and you're like, you know, she's killing it, like, you know,
how did she get there?
Exactly. Like, what kind of things did you experience along the way? So I like to have really just candid and open conversations with folks, like, you know,
people need to hear these things to know that it's not, again, like, it doesn't happen overnight. People have gotten screwed, me included, you know, and like, I mean, we're being candid as candid, but seriously, right? So what's the name of the podcast so people are...
the name of the podcast is Unspoken Terms. So we focus. We talk about all types of legal business things, but we focus in kind of more specifically on those almost unspoken terms of contracts. So kind of we talked about earlier, like signing on deals, not really having read it or known it.
For you, Casey.
Yeah, for sure. You gotta go on the podcast so you can share. But yeah, and just really kind of highlighting those moments where like, oh crap, like I had no idea that contract had a work for hire clause in it, and now I own nothing. And,
it's like the worst feeling ever. Okay, so let's talk about shoes. This is support creative souls. So we'd like to see what is somebody's favorite shoe or what they kick into. So what's your favorite shoe splurge? Are you a sneaker girl? Are you a designer?
That's a good question.
People struggle with this question.
Yeah, because I feel like you would ask me this question like 2 years ago. I would have had you.
Please, just don't say flip-flops.
Oh, definitely not flip-flops. No.
Okay.
I like a good like chunk heel situation, like these boots you have on are really cute.
Oh, let me go ahead and give us the shoe foot. Go ahead, pull up your foot.
Oh, my foot. Okay, can we?
I know. I gotta figure out a different way to do shoes. But this is it. Her heels are fly, by the way. I love them. They go with your blue blazer. We'll take a picture of them in a minute so you can see. But yeah, I like a chunky heel too. Just
there's it's a nice little style. I like a low boot, like a. What do you call it? Not like a booty, but
a little booty.
Thank you.
Booty.
I like booties. I just like cute shoes. Honestly,
Yeah,
I don't have like a super like.
Yeah, some people are like, I like designer. I like this. And, I guess kind of into design, but I can't afford that. So I like whatever looks good on my foot, and I sell shoes. So anyway, so this is our question for every podcast, and I always have to read it because I always say it wrong if I'm not. So what would you tell a young creative who is currently where you were 5 years ago? Is that right? Yeah.
What would I tell a creative? Follow your passions, even if it seems really outlandish or really crazy, or you don't know anyone who's in the space you're trying to go into.
Right.
With the internet, the way the internet is set up now, like
you can do anything.
You really can, and you can reach out to people. You can find the mentors that you need, but just relentlessly go after what it is that you want to do, because there will be no regrets there.
And I think a key, what you're saying is like you can find the mentors, like, and don't be afraid. Like her asking me like, what, we didn't know each other when we met at this event, and she came up to me and she was like, what do you I wanted to start my podcast. And from there, it's like just another affirmation from somebody that you are supposed to be doing what you already know you're supposed to be doing, but just not to be afraid of getting that knowledge from somebody else and sitting down with them and asking them questions, because now she has a podcast and a successful podcast. Tune into her podcast. And that's a wrap for us on Support Creative Souls today. We want to thank you so much, Casey, for coming. And we thank you for watching. I want to give a shout out to my sponsors, Fragrances of Wine. Check them out online, Instagram at Fragrances of Wine, and of course at Comida Caliente Salsa. I forgot the bottle again. Sorry, find us on Instagram at Comida Caliente Salsa. Buy it. And that's it. And of course, we co-work here, our other sponsor in Houston, Texas. Okay, see you later, guys. Besos.
That's all for Support Creative Souls podcast. I hope you enjoyed. Stay tuned for next time and make sure and follow us on social media at Support Creative Souls.